The underlying foundation of this push to standardized education really comes from an argument, a two-part argument. The first part of the argument is that U.S. students lag behind international peers in academic achievement on these international tests that you hear about. In fact, the timing of this call is perfect because yesterday the results from the Trends in International Math and Science study called the TIMSS for 2015 were just released, okay? And so you've probably heard about how low we ranked and how we're lagging behind international peers, and that's part of the argument. And the second part of the argument is because of this international achievement lag, the United States is losing global competitiveness. So I have to tell you that the evidence suggests that both of those claims are false, okay? And so first I want to deal with this idea that we're lagging behind in achievement, and then I want to just give the listeners some ideas about how competitive we really are as a country. So I'm going to throw a lot of statistics, facts, and figures at you, and then we can clean it up with any questions at the end, okay? So let's deal with this. Let's deal with this claim that U.S. students lag behind peers on international tests. And there's two main tests that you're going to hear about. Yesterday it was the TIMSS, and on December 6th you'll hear about this thing called the PISA. The TIMSS test tests students in math and science in grades 4 and 8. That just came out yesterday. And the PISA tests students who are 15-year-old students, okay? So, but keep in mind, before you even start to digest comparisons, there's just a basic rule for comparing things. So if you want to compare the academic achievement of the U.S. to 70 other countries that take these tests, then the kids who take the test have to be similar. So to compare two things, the two things have to be similar. So, but with international testing, you could have as little as 5,000 students from one city in a country take the test, and those results could represent the country, which is often the case in China. So we want to make sure before we start throwing comparisons around, we need to make sure that the samples are comparative, and they're not, okay? They're not comparative. So let me give you some examples. So in the TIMSS, fourth graders in math, the U.S. ranked 11th out of 45 countries, which is the top 25%. They ranked 4th out of 13 of the G20 countries. Those are the largest economies on the planet. Okay, once again, about the top third. In math, 8th grade, we ranked 9th out of 36. And in science, we ranked 10th out of 36. So not terrible, but not at the top of the world. But we have to remember that these samples of these students taking these tests are vastly different. For example, some of the things you'll see reported for China, you'll see scores reported for Shanghai and Hong Kong. And they're supposed to represent China. But the problem is the kids in Shanghai and Hong Kong are not representative of all the kids in China. For example, 84% of the kids in Shanghai go on to attend college. That rate is more than 3 times higher than the average rate in China. In Hong Kong, 90% of the kids attend private school where there is less standardization. There's more autonomy over curriculum, okay? And also in Hong Kong and Shanghai, parents of these students pay large sums of money to get their kids into the best schools, and it's kids from these top schools that populate the testing sample. So basically what you have in Hong Kong and Shanghai are the creation of these super schools where the top kids go, the richest kids attend, and those are the kids that take the test. Another interesting thing about China is migrant students in the large cities are not allowed to attend high school. Migrant students in China have to attend high school in their ancestral homes, which is many times in the countryside. So what happens is, consider that in the countryside, according to Stanford University's Rural Education Action Program, only about 40% of children living in rural China attend high school. Okay, so only 40% of the kids in the rural areas attend high school, and of those 40%, only 35 to 40% actually graduate high school. And the overall high school graduation rate in China is only between 25 and 45%. So right away, the kids who are taking these tests are not representative of the country. Another country you hear a lot about is Singapore, right? Singapore tops the charts in international testing. But keep in mind, Singapore has about 4 million people. Where I come from, we call that North Jersey, and Alice, where you live, you call that Dallas-Fort Worth. And that's what we're talking about here. So, so it's kind of silly to compare the results from the U.S., the third most populated country, to Singapore, which is really the size of one of our cities. Also, special education students aren't attending public schools the way they do here. Second language learners aren't attending public schools in many of these places. And in many of these countries, by the time you're age 15, only the top kids are still in high school. So in terms of just the basic sampling, we're not even talking about apples to apples. But another, I think perhaps the most important issue with these testing samples relates to child poverty. So the child poverty rate can explain up to 46% of the score for the top 30 industrialized countries. So what that means is countries with higher child poverty score lower on these tests. So that doesn't work out so well for the U.S. because we're hovering around a 22% child poverty rate, whereas the vast majority of the 29 other most industrialized countries have childhood poverty rates at about 10%. But one of the things that you can do is you can model scores for less poor students in the United States and compare those scores to the rest of the world. So what I've done is I've done some models where I've looked at schools where the poverty rate is about 10%, similar to the other countries that we're compared to. And what I find then is that our scores skyrocket to near the top of the world. So for example, in terms of grade 8 students on the TIMS in science, okay, when we put all our kids together, we score in 8th place. But when we look at apples to apples, where we look at kids from similar poverty levels across the world, we're 4th place, tied with Japan. Okay, same thing for the PISA test that's going to come out on December 6th. You're going to see a lot of press about that and how our achievement is stagnant, we're lagging behind. This is a Sputnik moment, all the things that the politicians say. However, when you look at kids from schools that are similar to schools in other countries that take this test, we score again at the top of the world. In fact, in reading, we score first in the world. First in the world in reading when you look at kids from schools with 10% poverty compared to other countries in the world. And we go from 23rd place to 2nd place in science in the world. So apples to apples, we rival any country that's taking these international tests on any test we take. Our problem is we're not comparing apples to apples with these international tests, okay? But I think some of the things that your listeners might be interested in is, I think more importantly, none of the ranks from PISA or TIMS correlate with international indexes of innovation, creativity, or entrepreneurship. And we know those are the hallmarks of economic competitiveness. Those are the hallmarks of an innovation economy. Those are the hallmarks of the U.S. economy. So these ranks, and I did the study, these ranks do not correlate to those indicators. However, when you look at these international indices, for example, the U.S. ranked 2nd in overall global creativity in 2015, behind Australia. Some other prominent countries, Italy was 21st, Japan was 28th, South Korea was 31st, Russia was 38th, China was 62nd, and India was 99th. Those are all G20 countries. Those are all our major competitors, and they all rank much further below us. And I guess here's a fun fact that I like. In terms of creativity, on the sub-index of educational attainment, that's, how well does your education system, how well can your education system support the operationalizing all this creativity? Like, what can you actually do with it? Well, the U.S. ranked 2nd in the world in educational attainment in terms of bringing creativity to the marketplace. So unlike TIMS and PISA rank, creativity rank relates strongly to national GDP. Right? And so I think having a higher national GDP is much more important than having a higher PISA or a TIMS rank. Innovation, once again, on an international index of innovation, the U.S. ranked 5th, China ranked 28th, Korea ranked 14th, Japan was 19th, Russia was 48th. But the U.S. ranked number one in the world in terms of its quality of innovation. So not only are we putting out a lot of innovation, they're the top quality in the world. And I think that speaks to what we're doing here in the U.S. in terms of education and worker productivity and all those other things that make a great economy. Same thing, entrepreneurship. We were number one in the world. Out of 130 countries, we were number one. Followed Canada, Australia, the UK, Sweden. Korea was 28th. Japan was 33rd. China was 61st. And Russia was 70th. Similarly with utility patents. These are the patents for all the high-end electronics, the drugs, all of the things that make your life better. The U.S. in 2014 ranked number one in the world for utility patents. So we're putting out the most high-end patents. We had 158,000 compared to the rest of the world, 167,000. So the U.S., 158,000. All of the other countries combined, only 167,000. China only put out 7,200. And just a couple more statistics in terms of overall economic strength. The World Economic Forum has ranked the U.S. the strongest economy in the world since 1999. It is ranked in the top 3 out of 130 economies for 12 of the last 16 years. And the International Management Institute has ranked us number one in the world for the last 19 out of 20 years. So when you look at all of these other indicators, another indicator here, scientific papers, right? We rank at the top of the world in scientific output in physics papers, chemistry papers, mathematics papers. In the STEM areas, we are putting out the top quality scientific research. So I don't pay much attention to the international test ranks. What I pay attention to are these downstream indicators that really relate to the overall economic strength of the country. When you look at those, we're outperforming every country on the planet consistently, and we have been for decades.
Let me ask you